Lose a former five-star, gain a proven star. That is the story for USC football this week. And the quarterback position is seemingly set for 2024 and play in the Big Ten. Welcome to Trojan Conquest Live right here at the Voice of College Football. Always enjoy this hour with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire and, of course, Tim Prangley, who holds it down for us here on our USC Voice of College Football channel. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
It's like it's been a whirlwind, right?
Yeah. Whoa.
All right, Matt. Well, we've had the conversation and sometimes debate here amongst each other, and then also with our viewers about the level of play of one Will Howard, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions last season for Kansas State. He's got a Big 12 championship to his resume as well, but he was certainly good enough for Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, so I mean, like this is not a home run, but it does reflect what certainly seems to be a change in philosophy, or at least a change in approach for Lincoln Riley. I mean, Lincoln Riley definitely seems to be doing things differently, and in many ways, and this is going to be one of the big topics of the show tonight in terms of the bigger picture at USC. Where was this philosophy a year ago? Not so much in terms of Will Howard, but in terms of like building a complete team. Like if you're going after Will Howard in the portal, as opposed to some of the other names that are out there, like you're basically saying you don't need your quarterback to do everything. But that's what Caleb Williams had to do. The roster was constructed such that, and the coaching staff were constructed such that everything was so reliant on Caleb Williams. So and Lincoln Riley pretty clearly neglected other areas of his team with the way he built his coaching staff for 2023. And I'm sure a lot of USC fans are frustrated by all this because, I mean, first off, like D'Anton Lynn, Matt Entz, and now Doug Belk coming in to coach the secondary. I mean, that's an all-star defensive staff. And where was this a year ago? Because if you had these defensive coaches a year ago, you wouldn't have Tackett Curtis in the transfer portal right now. You wouldn't have Domani Jackson in the transfer portal right now, because these guys would have gotten big league coaching, unlike what they received from Alex Grinch and Dante Williams and Brian Odom, the linebacker coach. Lincoln, I mean, it's good that Lincoln Riley is doing all these things now, but of course, because he had to get rid of Alex Grinch and because he had to get rid of Dante Williams, these portal departures on defense were bound to happen. Dante Williams, say what else you want to about him, but he forges strong relationships with the players that he recruits. But the flip side is that if he was ever going to leave, that certainly carried a portal risk with him. And so by staying with Alex Grinch and Dante Williams for another year, as opposed to getting coaches such as what we've seen the past few weeks with Lynn, then Entz, and then over the weekend, Doug Belk, it was just, it's a mismatch in terms of timing. I mean, again, it's good that it's happening, but we're really seeing how big a mistake Lincoln Riley made by not fortifying his defensive staff a year earlier, because now you're seeing the exodus of some really talented players. And the ideal scenario would have been, let's have Doug Belk coaching Domani Jackson. Let's have D'Anton Lynn and also Matt Entz coaching Tackett Curtis. And unfortunately, just the way the dominoes fell, because the coaching staff was assembled at a later point, and because Lincoln Riley appropriately, I might add, wanted quality coaches in these positions. That's the trade-off for getting quality coaches on the defensive side of the ball, was losing time relative to the portal. And that lost time, allowed Domani Jackson, Tackett Curtis, and others to reconsider their place at USC. And then, so as soon as Dante Williams is out the door on Saturday going to Georgia, then Domani Jackson leaves on Monday, less than 48 hours later. I mean, so it's a bitter pill for USC to swallow. To a certain extent, you can say it's the necessary cost of letting Dante Williams go. But the bigger picture is, Lincoln Riley should have insisted on excellence from his defensive staff a year ago. He should have cleaned house a year ago. And now this is why we're seeing that transfer portal exodus. Some really promising players who, didn't pan out this past season, but mainly because they weren't coached well. And so it would have been great for USC to now have this all-star defensive staff coaching these high potential players, but it's not going to happen. And so that has to be the very frustrating part of all this for USC. But, because USC does have, just to kind of complete the circle here and go back to your initial point about Will Howard, USC is now constructing its roster and its coaching staff in ways that the quarterback is not going to be asked to do everything. Now it's about having that complete team, all the units, all the parts of the roster, all the pieces of the puzzle pulling together to really reinforce and help each other. And that part of all of this I like, but you just wish that Caleb Williams would have been the benefit of that kind of all for one philosophy a year ago, and it didn't happen.
Will, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that. On the first day of Christmas, Troy gave me, I messed up the line, didn't I? Troy gave to me a offense without Parker as offensive coordinator. MF targeting Kirby Moore from Missouri. Got to make the college football playoff in 2024 now. That coming in from our Irish fan who is happy about Gerard Parker leaving to go to Tulane, and Marvin Freeman has other opportunities to go elsewhere.
It'll be interesting. So he picks up.
Not the best news for USC. We were looking forward to having Jared Parker for another year.
Yeah. The gift that keeps on giving, but he's leaving. So
anyway, Tim, your overview of all these many news stories, not just today, but really over the weekend, over the past 48 hours.
Well, I mean, what we've seen just over even going farther back is that how Riley talked about the fact that there was going to be an absolute emphasis on the defense. And if you're looking at the guys that are being pulled in, there is a huge haul, both on our recent high school commits, defensive line, as well as the guys they're bringing in from the portal, bringing in the two Beavers down, Akili and Easton, linebacker. I mean, so you're seeing some movement. I mean, like I titled, the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. I mean, that's what's going to happen. With the age now of people could transfer out without any penalty for sitting out. This is what you're going to see. Oh, I'm not going to start next year. I'm going to go find somewhere else. And then also remember, you also remove the position coaches for both of these guys. So, when TAKETH loses, Odom, and when you have Domani Jackson losing his position coach. When you lose position coaches, this it's not the head coach or the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator that they're really concerned about. They spend all their time. They usually commit on those trips. They're committing to their position coaches. So when Dante left and when Odom left, the writing was on the line, as well as look at the guys coming in. You're bringing in, probably our new inside linebacker, and so that's going to be more competition there. And it just means that he's going to move on. And as well, out of state guys, you have a guy in TAKETH Curtis. He came out here from Louisiana. You're not going to play. It's kind of hard to keep a guy that's away from home. You not get that action. This is more likely. You see it all the time. These guys that are not playing, they get more homesick than if they're on the field. So it's as I like the commitment to defense that was being talked about. I like the offensive line additions that we have here at USC. You're building. These guys are not 5-stars, so they don't have that thick Midwest or Southeastern Conference body, but they do have the frame. You do have those guys 6'7", 270 that might be converted tight ends, but these guys are the kind of guys you see that they come in for a couple of years, they're a project, but they have good footwork, they have good bend, they're real athletes. They put that weight on. These are the guys you see to transfer very well to the NFL, and in a couple of years, I absolutely see that being the case. So I've been very happy. The guy I'm talking about is Taaga that came in recently, the most recent offensive line addition. I'm really excited to see what he can do in a couple of years.
The addition of Will Howard, and this is not a knock on his abilities at all. This is more a statement on the superhuman characteristics of a Caleb Williams. What it struck me as, and of course, the results, wins and losses, are going to dictate the fans' response of the evaluation of the move. But CJ Stroud to Kyle McCord, Caleb Williams to Will Howard. And if the rest of the team doesn't upgrade significantly, then, you know, you go from a quarterback and passing game heavy dependent situation, which is not healthy probably for the long-term success of the program, but just so that all the rest of that is upgraded to compensate for the loss of Caleb Williams.
It's a really fascinating point, but like within that nuance, the larger reality is that why wouldn't you strive for excellence everywhere, right? I mean, that's the thing that kills me about Lincoln Riley settling for Alex Grinch, for a second year instead of immediately, right after the Cotton Bowl, pouncing, to try and get an elite defensive coordinator. Like, and we can go back to the year one conversation about, he's trying to install his system. And we talked about this plenty on our show here at the Voice of College Football. But when you implode that dramatically and you're not playing the 1989 San Francisco 49ers or another historically great offense, you're not facing Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Roger Craig, Tom Rathman, playing nice little talented team. But, again, like, we're not going to put that team on the Mount Rushmore of all-time great college football offenses. And when you implode the way USC did at the end of that Cotton Bowl, if you are, want excellence, and if you claim to be in the mix for college football playoff berths and national championships, you pull the plug, right? And so Lincoln Riley yet doubled down for one more year, and people in the chat have mentioned that, if you don't have Alex Grinch and Dante Williams in 2023, you probably don't get Damani Jackson in the door as a recruit. You don't get some of these other guys, in the school and on the roster. But I mean, isn't that part of this whole thing that so many people at USC, or not at USC, but just the fan base, a lot of USC fans over the past few years said, but you can't let go of Dante Williams. He's too good a recruiter. And that really, to me, always felt like a false choice. I was always the bad cop on Dante Williams, so I'm going to claim a little victory on this one here. I've been wrong about a lot of other things, but not wrong about this. That, why should we get into positions where we have to choose between an assistant coach's recruiting prowess, but he's not that good in terms of actually developing players? You should be able to get both, right? I mean, there are a lot of assistant coaches out there who do better jobs, who have better track records. And the other thing, and this is where USC has finally made the course correction. But again, why couldn't Lincoln Riley have done this a year earlier? Dante Williams going to Georgia, it's a great fit for Dante Williams because you have Kirby Smart there as the head coach. You have Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann there as defensive coordinators. So you have three really smart X and O guys on defense. So in Georgia, in Athens, Dante Williams can just be ace recruiter. That's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to do diddly in terms of actually developing players, because you have three guys, if not more, who will develop defensive players into NFL caliber studs. So like, that is a smart architecture for a coaching staff, that's the kind of situation where someone such as Dante Williams belongs. And so, why is Kirby Smart the owner of 2 national championships and a mini dynasty at Georgia? He knows how to build a full staff, and he knows where to put certain pieces. And this was Lincoln Riley's mistake, that if you're going to have a guy like Dante Williams, who is all recruiting and no player development for the most part, that might be a slight exaggeration, but only slightly. You have to have the elite X and O guy at the coordinator spot. But he knew that Alex Grinch was far from being the best possible man to be defensive coordinator. So that would magnify Dante Williams' weaknesses, not his strengths. But and so again, it's ironic that, if you had Danton Lynn as defensive coordinator and you had Matt Entz as a defensive assistant, kind of being a sounding board for Lynn and also being linebacker coach, if you had Danton Lynn and Matt Entz on a staff, and then you had Dante Williams as ace recruiter, that would be a lot like the setup now at Georgia. But instead, Dante Williams was paired with Alex Grinch and Brian Odom, and that was a recipe for disaster. And disaster is exactly what USC got in 2023. So again, it's good that Lincoln Riley has finally seen the light in terms of coaching staff construction, but he should have seen the light on January 2nd in Arlington against Tulane, and he didn't. And Lincoln Riley basically wasted 11 months of everyone's life, my life, Tim's life, Domani Jackson's life, Dante Williams' life, Brian Odom's life, Alex Grinch's life. Should have all done this in January of 2023.
Well, and the worry is, so we won't ever know what Dante, because let's face it, that defensive scheme that Grinch was running put a lot of pressure on the corners, put a lot of guys on islands. Clearly, Domani Jackson didn't seem often that he even knew where he's supposed to be lining up in that scheme. How much we put on the coaching of the quarterback coach. Yeah, you've been on it, Matt. I give you full credit for that. How much is this just a trade up? I mean, you got the opportunity to bring in Belk. You can't pass up on that. I do believe that Riley said that he's not done. They're still evaluating what's going on the coaching on defensive side of the ball. So I don't think that they're done there yet. Clearly, recruiting's not done yet. But they got a couple of young guys that are coming in. But the quarterback room got a hell of a lot thinner losing Domani Jackson, because you were kind of going to pencil him in probably as, he and Covington were probably going to be your starting corners with Roland Wallace gone. But you have Marcellus Williams coming in from USC, highly touted cornerback from St. John Bosco, highly recruited corner, and then you also have the kid from Los Alamitos is coming in, Isaiah Rubin, and from Texas you have Braylon Conley. So I mean, there's young guys coming in, but really you have Maliki Crawford and then Traquan Fegans. He's going to be coming in as well, and you have Jacoby Covington. But that's pretty slim. So they're going to be fishing in the transfer portal to get some cornerbacks. So that'll be interesting to see how that works.
So the loss of Malachi Nelson, is that simply a situation in which he was ready to stay there, compete for the job against Miller Moss, but basically because of just competing with Miller Moss, have a clear pathway to the starting position, and then once it was apparent that USC was going after a veteran quarterback to most likely win the job and bridge Caleb Williams to Malachi Nelson, that he wasn't necessarily up for another year of waiting.
Now, you want to hit that first?
Yeah, I think, Malachi Nelson could see that Lincoln Riley was going after a portal QB, for this season, and he could put the math together. He could do 2 and 2. Also, like if you read the Los Angeles Times, you follow Ryan Kartje, the USC beat writer. He shared a quote from not today, but like a few weeks ago, I think it was, where Lincoln Riley was talking about both Miller Moss and Malachi Nelson, and the way Lincoln Riley talked about Miller Moss was much more glowing than about Malachi Nelson. And that doesn't mean Lincoln Riley was throwing Malachi Nelson under the bus. He wasn't. But he did say, it's a slower, longer process with Malachi Nelson. Lincoln Riley also just alluded to the injuries. Like Lincoln Riley was not even being critical of Malachi Nelson. He was just acknowledging that injuries really slowed his progression. And so, Malachi Nelson, if he had visions of being, the guy who would take the baton from Caleb Williams, in many ways, it was injuries as much as anything else that got in his way. But it remains that Malachi Nelson's situation was very different from what he had expected and hoped for. And, I was out at the end of this regular season saying, you know what, you can't just ride or die with Miller Moss and Malachi Nelson in your quarterback room. You did need to go into the transfer portal for a proven quarterback, if nothing else, to at least make Miller Moss earn the QB1 job for 2024 and have to set a necessarily high standard of performance if he's going to be QB1. At the very least, you have to have a proven guy pushing Miller Moss to a higher level if you're going to continue to entertain any thoughts about Miller Moss being the QB1 for the LSU season opener in Vegas in 2024. So Malachi Nelson looked at that and he pretty simply arrived at that calculus where, yeah, I'm not going to be playing in 2024. I need to look at a different situation. So I can't blame the guy. And it also brings up the point that, we get into discussions about how you develop a college football roster and how you develop a college football program through the portal compared to and balanced against how you develop your program on the recruiting trail. And I think we can pretty generally agree that of all the positions where, getting a portal pickup is easier and in many ways more desirable than having to, scour the recruiting trail. You can get at quarterback, you get that instant gunslinger, game changer, who can, just by himself, by his presence on the field in the huddle, can dramatically change the equation. And how many teams across the country have we seen, both for better or worse, teams that did address their portal needs at quarterback, teams that didn't address their portal needs at quarterback? And how many teams are there where, you can say, oh, if only they had paid attention to the quarterback spot in the portal, they'd be amazing. Like Iowa comes to mind, and a lot of other, Nebraska comes to mind, teams that have really good, solid defenses, but didn't have that quarterback, to take care of the offense. So, in terms of building a program, I think we all agree that offensive line is the position group where you do need to do it on the recruiting trail and through your internal development, coaching. Like you can't just, throw darts at the wall and hope that they hit the target. You need to be doing that stuff internally with your strength training, with, getting guys to work together. Like you need that 5-as-1 continuity on an offensive line. So you need to be bringing most of your offensive linemen up within the program. But quarterback is very different. Quarterback, you have a marketplace, and if you can find the right guy in that marketplace, you can instantly give your offense, if not a makeover, you can address that one gap at that one very important position that can keep you competitive at a high level in college football on a relatively annual basis.
And, Miller Moss is not a young quarterback. He's been at USC for years, but he's relatively green. He got the second half of the Stanford game, which was not very impressive, but he is a solid quarterback. He came in, a high 4-star, highly recruited guy, and he has the ability to play. And let's see what he does. It's be interesting. Hopefully this offensive line can protect him so he can stand up long enough to show us what he can do with his arm. But that brings up one thing we kind of skirted around here. So I thought that Malachi Nelson would hang out because he's got a whole nother year of eligibility. Miller Moss, this is it. He's got one more year. And if he loses a job to Will Howard, and I can't see Will Howard coming over unless it's pretty much almost ordained that he's going to be the starting quarterback. Is Miller? I know Miller's a huge USC guy, but is he going to stay? I mean, is it? So then that leaves you with Jake Jensen as your backup. You're rolling with two scholarship quarterbacks, and so I thought that you'd have Malachi hanging out as the optimal situation, going, okay, well, I have 2025, and this makes me wonder how feasible it is now that in 2025 Julian Lewis is coming, because why else is Malachi getting out? I mean, I get it, you want to be a starter, but you still have another year. You're the backup. You're one play away from being the starting quarterback, and that was going to be available to him. But he left. So it means, to me, it seems like he does not have that path in order to go. He realizes it now, and so I'm out. So that's one. On one note, it sucks losing a talent like Malachi Nelson, but it also means two things. One, and you never want to count your chickens for that, especially when the kid's in Georgia. But I mean, when you've got the number one quarterback in the 26 class that might be reclassifying to the 25 class, and it looks more like that 25 class because Malachi, if you read the tea leaves, he's bailing. That might show you that Will Howard 24, and then maybe it's Julian Lewis coming here the next year. So it's interesting. I mean, seeing him leave, there's also been rumblings that he hasn't been happy all year. Lots of rumors and speculation that he thought he was going to be the guy, but like you said, Matt, he had those injuries that set him back. So again, very interesting to see how that's going to go down. Are we going to be stuck? Here's the thing: will we be stuck with Will Howard and Jake Jensen as the backup quarterback come spring? That's a concern that we have to have. And is there probably another quarterback possibly in the spring that I might pull out of the portal if that is the case? But again, another problem for another time.
Will Howard is certainly a nice player, but he doesn't strike me as either the caliber of player in terms of what he's achieved at the college level, nor the high-level recruit, although he was the 13th rated pro-style quarterback, but not at the level that he had some type of entitlement coming in to his college career. He's had to fight for everything that he's gotten, that he doesn't mind. Hey, I understand that they've got a 4-star quarterback who has waited his term, and I'm going to have to battle him for the starting job. Maybe he was somewhat promised this job. I kind of doubt it, because I don't think he's at the level of that kind of player to demand that he would be starting at USC. I just think that he's used to competition. He's been fighting for a starting job at Kansas State against two other part-time starting quarterbacks, Skylar Thompson and Skylar Howard. I get them mixed up all the time, but Adrian Martinez, of course, who came in from Nebraska. So he's accustomed to that. We also have a super chat contribution coming in here from Gixxer Squid, one of our favorites. And just so I don't botch this one up, I'll put my glasses on. Gixxer Squid, thank you so much for the 5 spot. Matt, Grinch, Dante, and Wiley, if not now, when seems like the next logical domino to fall?
Well, Gixxer, you're making my heart go pitter patter. And there is a certain pain attached to your point, because doubling down on Bennie Wiley and keeping him around certainly carries the same whiff, and it resembles the same pattern of, well, I'm going to stay with my guy for one more year. It certainly has that kind of feel and flavor. And so, like, if I was making the decisions and having said everything that I've said already about, Lincoln Riley just wasted our time over the past 11 months by retaining Alex Grinch, retaining Dante Williams, instead of, doing this house cleaning now in December, which he should have done this past January. Retaining Bennie Wiley feels very much the same way. And, I hope I get to be proven wrong by Bennie Wiley. That would be great, because that would mean that USC is going to have a very good 2024 season. It's going to have a very good 2024 offensive line. And I think in many ways, the reminder about Bennie Wiley, Gixxer, and everyone else watching here at the Voice of College Football, the key reminder about Bennie Wiley is that it wasn't just a defensive problem, right? The offensive line regressed relative to 2022. And in many ways, and I've said this before on recent shows with Mark and Tim, that to me, the offensive line is the centerpiece of USC in 2024 for sure. And really, it's going to be the determinant of how successful this program is. Because when you think about it, first off, you're bringing in Will Howard, not the best of the best at quarterback. You're bringing in a guy who comes from Kansas State, where he wasn't supposed to be the hero. He's not going to be the hero now. So there's a certain continuity in terms of what you ask from Will Howard compared to what you ask of Caleb Williams. So like Lincoln Riley's already making that adjustment in terms of, again, not putting everything on the quarterback. So that puts a lot more on the offensive line. Tim and I have had this conversation. Would you rather have the elite quarterback and the decent offensive line, or would you rather have the solid quarterback but the elite offensive line? And Lincoln Riley seems to be setting up his roster for 2024 such that we don't have to have a spectacular quarterback, but we do need to have that offensive line being better. And so to draw it back to Bennie Wiley, again, it wasn't just the defensive side of the ball, it was also the offensive line regression. And so how this offensive line performs, can this offensive line be powerful and dominant and nasty? That in many ways is going to be the whole ball game, because you're losing Damani Jackson, you're losing Tackett Curtis, you're losing some of these defensive pieces in the portal. If your offensive line can road grade, if your offensive line can dominate, you minimize whatever instability and limitations you have on the defensive side of the ball because of these portal defections and because of the transition that you're having on the defensive side of the ball this season. So in many ways, the track record and the performance of Bennie Wiley at USC in 2024, it really is going to focus on that offensive line. Not that the defensive line won't be significantly important as well, but in many ways, that offensive line is important because the Bennie Wiley factor and how Bennie Wiley related to and with Alex Grinch, it wasn't just defense. There was also an offensive component. That's why I was so critical of Bennie Wiley. So the offensive line is going to be the prism through which Bennie Wiley's performance is going to be judged this season, Gixer.
And so this is where I guess why maybe Gixer asked a question of Matt. This is where Matt and I disagree all the time because, I think, has Bennie Wiley proven anything? No, I don't think he has. But remember, you guys, he's going to, whatever these coaches want and the players, they're going to tell the strength team, hey, this is what we want you guys doing. This is how we want these players. We want them at this way, whatever. Grinch told him, hey, this is how I want the players. And he gave it to them. And he flat out came out and said at the beginning of this year, they got him out there in front of the cameras really early on to say, hey, I'm gonna put the guys what they want. And coach tells me they want to get bigger. We're getting bigger. It's not the medium 10, it's the big 10. We're getting bigger. He says they're going to eat, they're going to lift, and they're not going to have a choice. And as far as on the defensive side, was it Bennie Wiley and the strength program, or was it the fact we were asking undersized linemen to go up against gigantic offensive lines at Oregon, at Notre Dame, at Washington? Was it the strength and conditioning program, or was it the players? And I'm not blaming the players. I mean, if you're 6'2", God made you 6'2", and your frame, you probably should be carrying about 100 or 280 pounds. That's who you are. If you're a linebacker being asked to play a tackle, that's not your fault. That's a problem within. That's not your issue or Bennie Wiley's issue. And on the offensive line, I think the issue of offensive line wasn't the strength or nastiness thing. It was communication, and it was there were some line calls. There were some missed assignments and free runners, and that's where I think we struggle on offensive line. I think when they pinned their ears back and they were blocking, Matt, our run game was pretty effective at times. And part of that was that the offensive line guys that, offensive lines love the run block. They get out there, they get nasty. And I think they had that nastiness, but it was more the communication along the line. So for me, I'm still waiting to see on Bennie Wiley. He hasn't shown me anything, but he hasn't shown me anything that I'm worried about either. And like you said, this year he'll have a lot to prove.
Which brings
We
us
got
to the loss of Michael Tarquin. How big a loss is that?
He struggled, and they're shuffling around the right side of that line the entire year. It just didn't seem to gel on that right side whatsoever. They kicked Kingston out to right tackle, in place of Tarquin. And I think towards the end of the year, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, Tarquin found himself on the bench. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much that's going to be. Remember, we're going to have a bunch of really hungry. There's sophomore, there's their second year, those freshmen, the redshirt freshmen that are coming out. That I'll keep on saying how happy and excited I am to see these guys. But we're going to see a lot of that 2023 class getting some serious looks this year. Probably going to see it in the Holiday Bowl, because it won't count against their eligibility in their redshirt year. So look for some of these young guys. They are big. They are thick. Talk about size and strength. These are the guys we're talking about. These are Big Ten quality size linemen, and they've been playing not on the first team, but this team as a unit's been playing together. So we might see some cohesiveness as they practice all year together. We had another. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say we have this. If you want to add to what I just said, go ahead.
So, what you've said, Tim, about the offensive line, that leads to another really important conversation to have at USC, and that is the Josh Henson conversation. And I would say that, if forced to choose between Bennie Wiley and Josh Henson in terms of, which guy should be more on the hot seat in 2024, I'd go with Bennie Wiley first, but that doesn't exempt Josh Henson from scrutiny. And, as we come up on the early signing period, we need to mention that, Josh Henson, first off, to be fair, he is still trying to dig out of the Clay Helton era, and that's not an instant thing. All right. And we can give Josh Henson the benefit of the doubt to that extent. But at some point in the not too distant future, Josh Henson needs to be landing 5-star offensive linemen at USC. The program's drought in that regard, the difficulty this program has had over the past several years in landing 5-star offensive linemen, mostly a Clay Helton problem. Again, this is not mostly a Lincoln Riley thing. It's still a Clay Helton thing. USC is still playing catch up in this regard. But nevertheless, if you are Josh Henson and if you're USC, you need to start landing the really big fish, the biggest fish in the portal.
Yeah. Now he did
on the recruiting trail. So Josh Henson has a lot to prove in 2024, and he should certainly be I'm willing to ride with him for another year, but he should definitely be coaching for his job this year.
They have the 24 class. They have the number 1 interior offensive line in Jason Sandamela. And I think is it Henson's issue or is it the NIL issue? Because those elite tackles are coming at a very heavy price tag. And if it is the fact that this is hearsay, no one's really come out and said this because the team's not supposed to dictate NIL. We know it's all circular, but we've seen it where we've had tackles, and they go up at 11th hour to Nike U and they get a nice presentation, and at the 11th hour decide to flip over to Oregon. Connerly would have been a huge asset. Then you could put Monheim at right tackle. We're probably a whole different season, I'm sure. At least 1 or 2 more wins if we had Connerly at left tackle, slide, I think, and then you slide Monheim over to right tackle. That solves a lot of problems on our offensive line, I think. I don't know if that's a Henson issue in recruiting and not landing those guys, or if it's what we're doing as far as our NIL policy. And that's something that can't be talked about in public because it's not supposed to happen. Yeah.
Well, Tim, very fair point. And my response to that would be this. How much money is Lincoln Riley making? He's making, in the area of, like USC is a private school, so that the exact financials aren't made known, but it's believed to be in the area of more or less $10 million a year. If Lincoln Riley values winning and he values resource allocation within a program, like he can't just, ask donors and boosters, to fork up certain levels of NIL money. How about he takes a salary cut? How about he lives on $7.5 million a year? That's not exactly a poverty wage. And he shoves here's something a Los Angeles sports fan.
Wait,
here's
Matt, because you can't use his salary to buy linemen.
Hold on, Tim. Here's something a Los Angeles sports fan can definitely relate to right now. Shohei Ohtani is deferring so much of his contract with the Dodgers so that they can bring in other guys. Shohei Ohtani is passing up on immediate full payment of his contract so that the Dodgers can win World Series. That should be Lincoln Riley's philosophy. Like he's not going to go to the soup kitchen or the food bank on $7 million a year. He can still live a very, very, very nice lifestyle. He should restructure his contract. And Mark, here's an example from the recent past. And I bring it up not because this guy is still employed at USC, but because it's a really instructive example in terms of a head coach taking ownership of a program and this this topic of resource allocation. Cliff Kingsbury, remember at Texas Tech, and you can talk about how Texas Tech is always going to be outgunned and outspent by Texas, by Oklahoma, by the other bigger programs in that part of the country. But Cliff Kingsbury was paid very handsomely by Texas Tech, and Kingsbury would not pony up for an elite defensive coordinator when he was the head coach there. And part of taking a head coaching job and wanting to make a program great means that you don't take the job if the superiors, if the athletic director, if the president, the school won't give you the resources you need at certain positions to really field a complete program. We can also look at Rich Rodriguez at Michigan. Michigan, for whatever reason, would not give Rich Rodriguez carte blanche to get the very best possible defensive coordinator. That's a big reason why Rich Rod failed at Michigan. It was very similar for Cliff Kingsbury at Texas Tech. Never spent top dollar on a defensive coordinator. And so if I'm a head coach and I really want to live up to my stated commitment, to win big and to be as good as I possibly can at my job, that means I need to make sure my defensive coordinator, my top assistants get maximum investment. I need to make sure my program is getting maximum of investment in all areas, not just my own salary. So if I have to restructure my contract, if I have to redo my deal, and I make a few $1 million less, but I'm still very generously compensated, I need to do the Shohei Ohtani thing. And so this might seem like a wacky idea. Maybe it certainly is an unrealistic idea. We don't see coaches, forfeiting salary, so that, other parts of their program can be more resourced. But let's just get this down to brass tacks. If Lincoln Riley really believes in winning, and if he wants to start winning some NIL battles against Oregon, he would fork over a significant portion of his salary. He would become the college football version of Shohei Ohtani in Los Angeles. I mean, he just needs to look at what's happening with the Dodgers, and he can say, maybe I need to be that kind of leader at USC. So it might be wacky, and it certainly might be unrealistic in terms of expecting a coach to forfeit a portion of salary. But if USC wants to win national championships, it's exactly the kind of thing that Lincoln Riley should do.
Okay, 2 things. No, 3 things. I'll do 3 things. 1, free Reggie. Free Reggie now. But the thing is also, as much as the NCAA loves us, Matt, I don't think it's within the guidelines for a coach to fork over $2 million of his money to buy a couple offensive tackles. Now, maybe if he wants to get more money and attract a coaching staff, I can see restructuring his contract. But I don't. I mean, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. The schools aren't supposed to be involved at all in NIL, and technically, it's not supposed to be directed towards a player to come to your school or do it's right. That's all inducement. So on paper, it sounds great, but again, free Reggie. NCAA loves us. If we even tried to do something like that, they would come at us with pitchforks and bullshit like they did last time. So I don't know if that's possible. I don't know. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
I'm not a lawyer either. I would certainly say that USC should be looking into every possible angle to start winning these battles. And one thing about Oregon, while we're on the subject of Oregon and Nike University, what did Oregon do today? Oregon brought in Dante Moore as its 2025 quarterback. Dante Moore is willing to collect that sweet Phil Knight cash and just sit on his butt for a year as Dylan Gabriel's backup. I mean, that should be USC. That should be what USC does. Stacking your quarterback room, convincing a guy to sit for a year behind the proven starter, and you line up your quarterback room, you lock it down for 2 full years into the future. That should be what USC is doing, but it's what Oregon is doing. So like USC can either just watch this Eugene money colossus continue to win battles, or USC should actually step up and actually do something about this crap.
I want the money. I think you're onto it. But we got Juju Lewis coming in 25. You know, he's better than Moore, in my opinion. He's the real deal. I don't want to scare him off, but also let's take that whatever $1.5 million that Moore's getting to sit the pine and put that into a left tackle. That's what I was putting that money on. Because, right, I mean, Matt, when it comes to quarterback, Lincoln Riley's never going to have a problem. He's going to have at the very least, a very serviceable quarterback every single year through the portal.
Yeah, well, but here's the counterpoint, Tim. Like, if USC was on par with Oregon in terms of stacking its quarterback room, what would happen would be Malik Murphy comes in along with Will Howard, and you get 2 guys, and Will Howard's the guy in 2024. And then Malik Murphy you convince him to sit through.
Matt, we talked about that. Remember, you and I talked about that exact same thing.
No, I mean, we talked about it, but I'm just saying the parallel with Oregon stacking Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore would be if Malik Murphy comes in alongside Will Howard. But that doesn't seem to be the way things are trending at the moment.
And I get you.
And so USC is definitely playing second place to Oregon. And, so, hey, where are we going to see urgency from this program? And where people within the program need to be looking at this and saying enough, like this should not be allowed to continue. But until people are do step up with their wallets, with their commitment, the Eugene money colossus is going to continue to win the day.
And listen, you guys, we have 250 you guys in here right now. Thank you. First off, thank you all for being here. It's just, again, I would talk to Mark and Matt and I do on the phone about football, just off the air. But having you guys here makes this thing really special. It's a great community. But if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do. Right now, right below me here, there's a little subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. Matt and I do a call-in show. It's scheduled for Fridays, but we pop up. When we do get some traction in this week on recruiting, and it's going to happen. We don't know about Wednesday, Matt. I don't know if the early signing day, if really that much mystery to it, if we're going to go live to have phone calls then. But go ahead and sub us up, you guys. We really appreciate it. We're getting really close to 5,000. Matter of fact, if everybody here right now subscribed, we would hit that 5,000. So take a second and go ahead and subscribe. Because remember, Trojans, good thing Lori's in here. She's an Oklahoma fan. Remember, every time you subscribe to our channel, somewhere in Norman, a Sooner freaks the hell out. And so if you subscribe right now, you're guaranteed that children will be crying in Norman for the rest of the night. So please go ahead and subscribe.
That is beautiful. That will never get old. Well, I got to tell you, if you guys aren't going to go live on Wednesday for National Signing Day, this is the lineup I've got going. So over on the main channel, if you love National Signing Day coverage, beat writers from Virginia, Iowa, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Oklahoma State, Oregon. Then we'll do Florida State, Miami, and Washington. Also bleeding into Thursday, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue, Wake, Ohio State. There you go. And we're still continuing to add. So we're going to cover as many National Signing Day classes as possible on Wednesday and Thursday over on the main channel. So please join us there. All right. Lemansky showing up tonight. We appreciate you, Lemansky. Always a good discussion. counterpoint welcomed in the Big Ten.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it is going to be fun. And, I let our Big Ten audience know tonight during our Big Ten live show. And folks, if you're not aware, we do a Big Ten live show every Monday at 6 Eastern. That'd be 3 p.m. Pacific Coast time for you folks out here. And, all that's left to be played in the Pac-12 are some meaningless bowl games and a college football playoff game, of course. But everything other than the play on the field for 3 hours for those schools is directed toward competition in the Big Ten. All these players will be playing Big Ten football. So join us on the Big Ten live show that we present every Monday at 6 Eastern time. So Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA fans, you are more than welcome. Everyone's welcome, but certainly we would like you guys to show up and represent on the Big Ten live show. And I will be, since my family's not arriving until the 26th, I'm going to be going live on Christmas night at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm either going to be spending Christmas by myself, both literally and digitally, in terms of a streaming service, or I'm going to be joined by many of you. We shall see. But we'll go ahead with our Big Ten live show on Christmas night at 6 Eastern.
All right, so we've been talking about the Big Ten, so let's get a Big Ten news item in here. Penn State hired Tom Allen as its defensive coordinator, and so noteworthy, not Jim Leonhard. So Michigan State didn't land Jim Leonhard. Penn State didn't land Jim Leonhard. I think we can put this one to bed, folks, here at the Voice of College Football, that no one was getting Jim Leonhard in the Big Ten. No Big Ten program was getting Jim Leonhard as its defensive coordinator. I would say, and I think I will ask Mark and Tim both for their opinions on this. I think it's pretty clear, especially after seeing the way Baker Mayfield torched the Green Bay defense this past Sunday. I think Jim Leonhard is angling for the defensive coordinator job with the Green Bay Packers. I think that seems to be the job that he's obviously holding out for. The college coaching carousel has pretty much run its course. There might be a few other openings at other programs, but like the prominent Big Ten schools have filled their openings. Like now, Michigan State hired Joe Rossi away from Minnesota. I can't begin to imagine that Jim Leonhard, loyal Badger, loyal Wisconsinite, would go to Minnesota. I like that. Just doesn't seem like a remote possibility. It seems very clear that Jim Leonhard wants that Green Bay Packer defensive coordinator job. So I mention all this just because if there was anyone who was still harboring some doubts, like why did we settle for Danton Lynn when we could have gotten maybe Jim Leonhard? That conversation is over. Done. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole anymore. USC was not getting Jim Leonhard, period, because Jim Leonhard was not interested. He's looking for that Green Bay defensive coordinator job. And so under the circumstances, with the options that were out there, I think USC did pretty well. I think that the new point of intrigue is that, when USC plays Penn State, Tom Allen's going to be coaching against USC, not with USC. And, I was pretty high on Tom Allen. So these USC Penn State games, they're going to be pretty high stakes at Trojan's Wire, because definitely don't want Tom Allen to throw it back in my face. That's going to be painful for me. Hopefully USC will be ready to beat the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, Tom Allen, you said right away in this process, Matt, I remember you said, hey, if Indiana lets him go, we've got to be looking at Tom Allen. And great points. Yeah, I don't think if he passed up on the USC job, the Michigan State job, the Penn State job, I don't think he's taking the Minnesota job. Right? Yeah. Couple positive points here. I saw them earlier. Where are they? So I haven't verified this, but the guys over at by the way, if you guys haven't checked out Light the Torch podcast, guys are awesome over there. Go make sure you check them out after our show. They do a great job over there. But saying that Taj Washington is going to be playing in the Holiday Bowl, that's huge. Mr. Reliable. They're not going to have. I don't believe Rice is playing. So having Taj out there will be definitely a great safety plug for them. Also, this is even on bigger news. Rumor has it Kalen Bullock is coming back in 2024. Yeah, I think so as well. That along Well, I mean, I think it's gonna be. I think our safety room is gonna be fine. I mean, we got a mix of newcomers and returning guys. That safety room is more than, and especially if a branch can come back from his knee injury, that room is stacked. So, good job there in the safety. And then also make sure you check it out, Gabe over at Trojan Blade. Find on Gabe. All right, sorry guys.
Let's hit on a couple of those notes from Tim. And Tim, thanks for bringing up those points. One is that, you know, with Taj Washington playing the Holiday Bowl, let's remember. So with Malachi Nelson in the portal, this is now 100% Miller Moss's game. So we don't have to worry or wonder about, you know, how would Lincoln Riley balance the snaps for Miller Moss and Malachi Nelson. This is now going to be a 100% Miller Moss game from start to finish. So having Taj Washington there, it provides a truer showcase. It gives Miller Moss more weaponry in that Holiday Bowl game against Louisville. So that's, you know, that's a really important thing to note from you know, these news items from Tim.
Folks, while you're doing your Christmas shopping, and most of that's going to be on Amazon, I'm thinking, or a good portion of it, we've got an Amazon link. It's in the description section of the videos, all the videos, including this one. Just go to the description section. You'll see Amazon in caps. Grab the link, put it somewhere where you will remember it, and that helps us grow and build the channel. So regardless of how much money you're spending on Amazon, it's all going to Amazon right now. So you might as well throw 2 or 3% here to the Voice of College Football and keep us rolling here, especially on the USC channel. So we appreciate that. Same shopping experience, doesn't cost you a penny.
And then also, you guys, if you want to join the channel membership, we've got a great group of guys. And Mark, I've taken the initiative to change the names of the memberships. So now for the highest one, we've got 11 national championships for $20. That comes with free, exclusive live streams and exclusive videos. And then the second tier, you have your 8 Heisman trophies, 8 free Reggie, 8 Heisman Trophy winners, and then and then I'm on the way. I have like 150,000 Rose Bowl victories. I'm not sure how many we have there. So those 29 Rose Bowl for just $2.99 for the lowest tier. We appreciate all of you guys. We got guys that have been members the entire time for the past 8 months. Thank you guys so much for being a member of the channel.
Absolutely. And check out those videos that Matt and I produced this past off season. There are plenty of those to go through. And I know that some of you have, but by the looks of the views totals, I know that not everyone that's a member is taking advantage of that perk. So a lot of good listening and viewing pleasure there for you if you want to take a deep dive on college football. We're talking some serious, intriguing type topics that you're not going to find anywhere else that connects USC to the Big Ten and to the rest of college football. Some of the top and most groundbreaking type topics that are facing the college football landscape, and we tie it to the USC situation, both traditionally and going forward. So check out those segments with Matt and myself.
And then also make sure you check it out, Matt, at Trojan's Wire. What we're throwing out there. There's just this great small group, USCJ, the Trojan Blade, and the guys over at Light the Torch, and then obviously over at Trojan's Wire. You guys, if you're not taking advantage of all of these sources for your football, I mean, I spend an entire morning just on those 3. USCJ and Gabe have a video. The Light the Torch guys always have live streams, and we're all supporting each other. We're all kind of an independent system trying to work together and trying to provide you guys fans with the sport and the content that you want. So make sure you're checking everybody out. And while we're on that, at 270, now we hit 270. Please, you guys, those of you guys out there that aren't subscribed, please go hit that subscribe button. It's the greatest compliment and thank you can give us. We're grateful and thankful that you're here tonight.
And there are so many times that Tim and Matt get together because there's breaking news. And if you're not subscribed and you don't have that notifications bell turned on, then you miss it and you can't take part. So that way you're locked in and you're ready to roll and you get that notification as soon as we go live here. Programming update would be our next show is Iowa Hawkeyes Live, Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern, unless, of course, I choose to go live at some point tomorrow because there's all sorts of transfer portal news, and that always happens, but you never know. But next scheduled live stream, Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, Hawkeyes Live over on the Iowa channel.
As we wind down here, we need to mention, just for our viewers, one reason you want to subscribe to this show at the USC channel at the Voice of College Football is that, you know, next Monday night and the following Monday night are Christmas and New Year's. So our schedule for this show, we're not going to have our normal schedule. So if you subscribe, though, you'll get a notification for the adjusted day and time for the next few weeks of shows here at Trojan Conquest and the USC channel at the Voice of College Football. So that is a very big reason for you to subscribe. You get that notification of when we have to adjust a time slot, because we're not going to be, you know, barging into your Christmas night or your New Year's party these next 2 Mondays. We respect your family time. You know, you do have lives outside of this show, believe it or not. So we're going to have adjusted days and times just for these next 2 weeks, because Christmas and New Year's fall on a Monday.
And also make sure, so we've had great callers the last couple of weeks, but the Conquest call-in show is going to be Friday, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. We may, there's no reason you should be subscribed, because we may go live. Who knows? If we start, you know, like the flipping pancakes, if we start flipping recruits on Wednesday, we might just have to go live and do a little bit of celebrating. If we lose a couple of recruits without getting, we might have to commiserate together. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Again, just hit the subscribe right down in your lower hand corner if you are not subscribed already.
Where does this recruiting class, let's see, stack up right now?
Well, I mean, if we're doing the fictitious star thing, I think we're 17th. And that's in high school recruiting.
Okay, I'm looking at number 8 on the 247 Sports rankings.
Is that the overall with, I don't know, is that last year's? Are you sure you're the right year?
Oh, that's last year's.
That'd be 23.
Yeah,
they were 8 last year.
2024. Okay. Yes, we're sitting at number 17.
Yeah, now that's just for the high school recruiting, and recruiting's changed now, and that portal class is a lot more exciting. Well, actually, no, I take it back. Again, don't get me started. I got every recruiting service on 3 people, and the 247 people get on me because I was pretty critical of stars. Look, stars do matter as a whole, you guys, but we all know just because you're a 4-star, you're not better. It doesn't mean you're better than a 3-star. Just because you're a left guard and not a tackle doesn't mean you're not more important to your team. You know, so a lot of the stars, remember, it's subjective, you guys, and the people that do it, they do a great job. I mean, I've been watching the 247 guys for years and years and years, but it is not a science. I can see, Mark, you have a lot of skepticism there. It's easy to pick the top 50 players in the country. I mean, I bet you we could do it. We could tell you the top 50 high school kids are in the country. You're going to get that right most of the time. So 5 stars, pretty solid. You know, people forget something. Oh, he was a bust. Well, there's injuries involved. There's, you know, maybe you got a Corey Foreman where the coaching staff is jerking him around all over the field, dropping his weight, moving him around, you know, so is he a bust or was he not utilized? There's those things. I just worry about people winning, you know, like kind of like in the underwear Olympics, like, you know, they're great in these passing leagues. They look great when they're doing these camps, and then they get onto the field, you know, and they might look like Tarzan, but they play like Jane. I mean, it happens every year. The measurables are all great, but they don't have that dog in them. They don't have that fight in them. So they get in and they just peter out. So yes, top 100, top 50, pretty tight. When you start getting towards 150, 250, really, I don't know. It seems to me it's very, very subjective.
Okay, well, if you're talking about there are roughly 70 Power 5 programs, and we're talking about 25 commits per team, you know, we're talking about 1,800 players, something in that range. So, of course, there are all sorts of misses all over the place in both directions, of course. But the volume of these rankings are extremely accurate, and they're most accurate near the top. Now, once you drop to 20, 25, 30, the development of the Wisconsin programs under Barry Alvarez in the past, or Mark Antonio at Michigan State, shoot, yes, they can make up 15 spots in the recruiting rankings, because once you drop to 20, 25 into the 30s and 40s, there's minuscule difference between those rankings. But basically, if you go to the top 5 or 6 programs in terms of total team composite talent over the last 10 years, you're looking at everybody who's been any kind of force in the college football playoff.
Yeah. Well, okay. But, there's the Bama bump. There's all kinds of things. If you told me who the top 50 were at the beginning, it just seems a change. To me, it just seems like those numbers, guys are depending on what team they go to. So you go, well, yeah, but look at these players. They have the most 5-stars and they win the national championship. Yeah, I know, because you start moving the rankings up for the teams that are the ones we know, like the Alabamas, the Georgias, Ohio States. They're for some reason, mystically, the numbers start going up towards the end of the cycle, and the other ones start dropping down.
That's almost justifying what I'm saying about how good those programs are. If there is a Bama bump, Bama has been the dominant program in college football during the college football playoff era.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm saying is I agree. At the very end, whoever Alabama wants, they're gonna get their pick of the best players in the country, and they've done their evaluations. Whoever Ohio State picks, they're gonna get who they want. They have the evaluations of all the players in the country. I'm saying when you get that player 225, and then you have a guy that we say, oh well, he's the offensive lineman, he's a left guard, he's like 500th in the country. And then you start balancing, this team's 14, this one's 16, this one's better than this team's recruiting. Sure. I mean, that's when it gets silly. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Overall, these evaluations that are done by these services, they don't just throw names and throw a dartboard. There's a lot that goes involved. It is very good, but it's not a science. That's all I'm trying to remind people of.
Absolutely not. Yes. Yeah, nobody should be running around bragging to their rival because they've got the 17th recruiting class and their rivals at number 20.
Mark, you did a good job of this. The difference between the top 3, when you go to 3 to 4 or 3 to 7, it's not just a couple. It's a massive leap in those classes. So, I mean, that's another thing. Well, I was 6 and you were 7. That could be a huge difference on. And also, I remember some of those Clay Helton years where we were like getting a 6th ranked class, and we had a bunch of safeties and a bunch of running backs and a bunch of wide receivers, but nobody in the trenches. But hey, we had the number 6 team in recruiting class in the country. We didn't address any of our needs, but we got a bunch of 5-stars. That doesn't mean anything either.
And the balance that you just talked about is huge, because for as good as Ohio State's been, and they have been just right on or a tick below Georgia and Alabama, it's been a little too offense heavy, and they've missed out and haven't been elite in some positional groups. And also, to your point, the transfer portal, Tim, that was your original point. The transfer portal has made these high school recruiting rankings less significant than they've ever been. They're still significant. It still matters because you're bringing in 25 players, and hopefully half of them are going to be on your roster in 2 to 3 years. I guess we'll find out. We'll have a lot of good metrics and probably statistical compilations of what can be expected down the road for these classes in the transfer portal era. Yeah, if you hang on to, I don't know what it's going to be, but 75% of that class, that's probably going to be a good showing 2 to 3 years down the line. But these recruiting rankings used to make up the complete total team composite talent ranking, but now it doesn't, because the transfer portal is so decisive.
And also, we're seeing it with A&M. We're seeing it with Georgia. We're seeing a lot of places. Sure, you sign the best recruiting class according to stars, but where are those guys when they're supposed to be juniors? Are they still even in your program anymore? So, I mean, the high school rankings really are, like Matt said earlier, though, when you're talking about defensive line, when you're talking offensive line, where you have to bring guys in, quality guys, develop them, have them play as a unit together, that is. USC just saw it. The guys Tarquin that came in were highly coveted by a number of teams, right? But they just didn't have that time. They didn't have those reps together. They weren't out there playing together on the field, getting the experience of playing as a unit. That's where you need. I think tight end delay said it. Really, you can go to the portal for quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. We showed that with Jordan Addison. Brought him in. What a huge difference having a playmaker like Addison was compared in 2023 compared to 2022 to 2023. So that you can feet up in. When it comes to offensive line, when it comes to defensive interior guys, you need to bring those guys in, you develop them, and you need to get them in the weight room. And that's the key.
And one more point to play off of that. While it's going to continue to be a skill and a commodity to keep these classes together to a large degree, let's understand, for as much as these rankings have been deteriorated by everything we're talking about, it's much easier and more feasible to grab a top 5 high school class and supplement it with great transfer portal additions than to rank in the 50s in recruiting and try to build an entire football team with stars from all over the country, because they're not running to the 50th ranked talent team in the country from a high school standpoint.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football, Trojan Conquest Live. We do this each and every Monday, except, as Matt just let us know, we've got holidays coming up the next 2 Mondays, so keep that notifications bell on, and you've got to subscribe to have the notifications bell, so please do that. Subscribe on your way out. Give us a like. Tim does an amazing job keeping us all lined up and together here at the Voice of College Football and on the USC channel. And of course, Matt Zemek provides his tremendous insight into college football, the Pac-12 and USC, and now the Big Ten, of course, and USC. Matt knows just about everything. You could throw anything at Matt. If we want to have a side tennis conversation or the NBA or anything, Matt's ready to roll. So he is a bastion of knowledge across the board. Guys, you make this show incredible, so thank you so much.
And the poll's finishing up. So with 157 votes, you got, so the question was, who would you have preferred to start in 2024? 6% others. I didn't really see any votes, but then you had 21% Miller Moss, interesting, 27 Malachi Nelson, and 46% Will Howard. So the people have spoken.
There it is. For Matt, for Tim, I'm Mark. We will see you next time on Trojan Conquest Live.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.